Okay, welcome back everyone to the next episode of Data Analytics Chat, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges that are occurring in the data and on AI world. Today we've got an interesting topic. It's becoming even more popular with the increase in data available. So we're going to discuss the evolution of data governance. I'm delighted to welcome our guest today. He's Eric Falstick. He is a data governance leader at Newsot, who are a emerging data and analytics consulting business. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Ben. Great to be with you today.
Cool. So I guess it's best to have you on the podcast. Do you want to quickly give the listeners a quick intro to yourself?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. Yeah, once again, my name's Eric Falstick. I'm based here in Florida in the United States, and I work for an organization called Newsot Incorporated. We're an emerging data and analytics consultancy here in the United States. Prior to my time at Newsot, I was with Accenture for 4.5 years prior to that, where I was a leader in their data and AI space, and essentially building data governance implementations and strategies for organizations across the United States and with some global reach as well. And I've been in the data management industry for well over 20 years. And I've had the opportunity to work in multiple different industries, whether it's healthcare or high technology or communications, media and entertainment, utilities, energy organizations, you name it. I've been in it and have seen it from multiple different places. So it's a very exciting space to be in. And it's something that keeps me excited to be working in every day.
Brilliant. So I guess you've seen a lot of change.
Yes, you've seen a lot change, and it's amazing as things change, and as our power to deliver analytics, to deliver data science, to deliver these amazing capabilities gets better and better every day. The fundamentals around making sure that you're enabling your data, that you're governing your data properly, still resonate. And they're still extremely important because if you're unable to master the things that you need to do to successfully put your data and enable it in the right place and making sure that your data is trusted and that your organization is literate, then all those other things that are really exciting that people want to get to, you can't get there. You don't have the maturity to do it. And you ultimately fail because your data is the key foundational element to those different things that you want to do. And if you're unsuccessful in ensuring the capability of your data, all those very exciting capabilities that you're chasing after, that your bosses are asking you to deliver, will never get there.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for this one because, like I said before we joined, a lot of people are, a lot of business leaders we speak to are actually going, yeah, actually, this is a topic I want to know because
Yeah.
obviously it's becoming more popular, or not popular, more critical because of the digital changes and changes in the market. So let's dive straight in. What are the origins of data governance, and I guess why is it coming more popular? I guess more critical recently.
Yeah, it's a great question because originally, data governance. I tell the people today this isn't your father's data governance or even the same data governance that we talked about 5 years ago. Because in the old days, it was very heavy in policy and procedure. We're going to create this very thick book of policies, and for anybody to have access to our data within the organization, they've got to sign their life away that they're going to conform to all these policies. We're going to be very rigid, and it was the power of no. And unfortunately, that fell out of favor with a lot of organizations because that simply wasn't acceptable to them. Now, organizations have realized that they want to build all these tremendous capabilities, that they really want to drive analytics across their organizations. They want to be successful. In order to do that, their data has to be up for the challenge. It has to be clean, it has to be quality. And I talk to CIOs and I talk to data leaders every day, and they say, I'm really trying to drive a data driven culture within my organization. But the problem is that a lot of people in my organization don't trust our data. A lot of people in our organization don't know what the right data is to use at the right time. And those are the challenges that we're now trying to meet by bringing data governance to organizations. I often say that data governance may be misnamed sometimes, and I like to believe it's more of a data enablement function. We're trying to enable organizations to be successful with driving data driven decisioning, with driving analytics, with driving even generative AI capabilities. And if you're unable to do that now with the data that you have, you've got to do something about that. And that's where I come into play. And that's where I help organizations get better with their data governance so that they can drive all those capabilities that they desire.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Before it wasn't much. much emphasis on this area, was there before? It's just, I think maybe the Gen I boom is obviously created a lot more data. It's now obviously got the data privacy, and there's a lot more critical business operations enticed in it now, isn't there?
Yes, and when we think about it, so the generative AI capabilities really illuminated the challenges and the lack of maturity that a lot of organizations had because oh, if I'm trying to bake a cake and if I just start with the frosting and the buttercream and the things that and the decorations, that's really to me the generative AI capability, the really exciting stuff that you see on top of the cake. But if you haven't built that sponge appropriately, if you haven't baked that sponge, then the whole cake falls apart. And
Mm.
again, I tell organizations all the time, there are so many things that you can do to really make yourself successful in this endeavor. You have to make sure that you're driving the data within your organization to be trusted, to make sure that all the people that you're requesting to become self-service enabled to drive analytics from a self-service perspective so that they're using the right things at the right time. But if they don't feel comfortable with what they're using, they're never going to do it successfully. So all of these capabilities have really brought this to the front. I need generative AI. And then immediately the chief data officers, the chief information officers start feeling very uncomfortable because they just can't certify, they can't be comfortable with the data that they're serving to their constituencies. Now they have to play catch up. They have to do the things that they probably should have been doing all along to make sure that they can meet the demands of their organization. And that's where we come into play again. And that's why data governance has now become such a more impactful topic than it was maybe a few years ago. And there's a lot of different reasons why organizations are struggling in this area. And not every organization is the same, but all of them have the same problem right now. Hey, I don't feel comfortable with the data that I'm serving to my analytics, to my data discovery environment, to my generative AI, to my LLMs. I have to do
Mhm.
something about it. And that's why it's become much more important these days.
Yeah. And then you saying, obviously, the bigger the business, the more challenging it is because of the more data they have.
In some cases, yes. Um, I think that sometimes the bigger the organization, sometimes they have some more visionary capabilities that they're trying to achieve. And in some cases, they may be more forward thinking, which I think is good. In other cases, there may be a smaller data universe, but more traditional thinking, and they haven't really understood why they're trying to do things. They haven't really gone through the transformation to become data enabled in their decision making. They're still living through gut feel and analytics, and they're not really trusting analytics to really help them with making the decisions that are going to drive their business. So I'm not sure it's necessarily, hey, we've got a big boat and we're trying to solve the world's problems with that. I
Yeah.
think it's more of the culture of the organization that really drives how successful someone can be.
I guess the big term, I mean, everyone I have to speak to is a data journey, isn't it? Everyone's at a different stage. I guess how far along you are, I guess how involved you are. No, interesting. Okay. And then how does data governance intersect with data privacy and security in like today's digital landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the key components of data governance is data lineage, data cataloging, and data cataloging goes right straight away into data privacy and data security capabilities. So if I'm cataloging my data assets appropriately and I flag something as potentially something that needs to be private or something that could be a security opening for someone, I'm making sure that data doesn't get into certain places that could cause me problems. So technically I'm tagging it so it doesn't go into models, so it doesn't go into places where I don't know where it's going. But also on the security side, we've got to be very rigid these days. There's so many bad actors out there, and we have to be airtight on who's accessing our data. And in the policy and procedure area, this is still the hottest topic. We have to make sure that we're driving our policy and our procedures so that we're not making mistakes, we're not letting bad actors have access to our data, we're not giving them the tools that they need to really do bad things to our organizations. So that policy and procedure angle still resonates. We still have to catalog the data to make sure that personally identifiable data or data that requires anonymization is being appropriately managed so that it's not getting into the wrong hands or not going to the wrong places. We're even coaching organizations these days where if we feel like there's a sensitive data set, synthesize the data, create a data set that may not necessarily be a true to life data set, but mirrors what is reality so that you can push that to a large language model so that models can be trained on that data. And that way, you're not exposing yourself from a privacy perspective or a security perspective, but you're still able to drive the results of the model that you're trying to train.
Mm, no, that's interesting. I think it's just, I think a lot of business we speak to, there's so many different challenges, different hurdles to get that come across. It's, I guess, to focus on what's your business strategy, isn't it? At the end of the day, what's the key thing you want to achieve? Because you can't do everything at once, can you? Because it's just going to be a mess.
It would definitely be a mess, and there has to be some prioritization. I
Yeah.
spoke to a CIO yesterday, and he said to me, I need to get to the point where we're doing self service analytics because we really want to propel our organization forward in making the right decisions using data to do it. But he said that we just don't have the maturity to do it. He wanted to talk at length, almost an hour and a half, which is an amazing amount of time for someone who is at that level of an organization, about specific strategies as to how he could manage their data better. What are the things that they need to do? And more than that, how to derive business value from this. And I think that's where a lot of organizations fall short. They're not using this opportunity to really understand how much value they're losing, how much churn is in their organization, how much inefficiency is being caused because they have liabilities and challenges with their data. The amount of time that we have people that are rectifying and trying to recover from bad data being in your ecosystem, that's just wasted time and wasted money that you're never going to get back. So if you really want to drive that culture within your organization, these are key fundamentals, but you have to scorecard it and you have to make sure that you're really showing business value, or else it just becomes a wasted effort that really organizations don't feel like they need to perpetuate into the future.
Yeah, no. And then I guess, what role does AI and machine learning play in modern data governance, should we call it?
Yes, it's interesting because we're now using AI to help the data stewardship process, to help the building of business glossaries, to assist in the crafting of data quality rules, to assist in the identification of potentially sensitive data elements. And we're using these tools, and it's giving us power and it's giving us capability that we've never had before. In the past, I've asked data stewards to create business glossary definitions for critical data elements within their domain, and they become very upset because it becomes a very time consuming and onerous process. They don't have time to do it. Now we can use generative AI tools to create a definition that maybe requires some additional curation, and it saves them a ton of time doing this. And it makes that experience much more comfortable for them. At the same time, the ability to, when we ask business data stewards to start crafting data quality rules, they may not have an understanding of SQL. They may not have an understanding of how these tools work or how to code something. But I could put that into an AI tool or a chat GPT like function, and it would spit out what that rule looks like in code for me. And I can immediately insert that in, and all of a sudden I have data quality monitoring at the drop of a hat. So these tools are giving us the ability to really extend our capabilities to be much faster in our time to market and make the data stewardship experience much more efficient and less time consuming. And that makes it much more palatable to organizations. That's why it's an exciting time, because the use of these tools is really making it a much more easily integratable experience within organizations.
And do you think, like, challenges is choosing the tools, or is it integrating tools into their business landscape? What do you think? Where's the challenges lie there?
I actually think the tool part of it is one of the easier parts of this data
Okay.
governance journey. I actually think the change management and the people
Okay.
operational part of it is the most difficult part of it, because I have a lot of organizations that come to me and they say, we bought this data governance package, we bought this tool, and we're nowhere. We're not successful at all. And we implemented it and we expected all this incredible magic to happen, and it never happens. And the reason it doesn't happen is because they've never brought their people along with it. At the end of the day, this is a culture change that we're trying to drive. And in order to drive that culture, we have to bring our organization with us. We have to organize our people so that they're part of this change that we're trying to deliver. We have to give them the training, we have to give them the change management that's required to be successful in collaboration with the tools that we're building at the same time. And if we do all of these things in concert with each other, then we're creating the recipe for success. But the people side of it tends to be the most difficult side to deliver because people are
Mm,
they're not ready to change very easily. They have been doing something the same way for a number of different years, and asking them to
mm.
change the way they think, asking them to change the way that they actually perform their daily duties is a big change that they struggle with. And we have to help them along that journey to be successful.
Yeah. No, change is hard because, let's say last year, like for example, I gave up smoking in June. I think I just did it, and then I
Mhm.
just after that, then you
Congratulations.
get, and then after that, it's just the change. You can't anticipate the change because then I just want to start eating more. So then you got to deal with that. So I guess in business, you got to be, you just got to go with the flow, isn't it? Because obviously you want to your end goal, stop smoking, but obviously it's always going to be a squiggly bit in the middle because your body changes and like business processes changes. And like
Yes.
you touched on, people, humans are humans. People are also different, aren't they? You got the risk takers, you got people that play it safe. People just don't want to change, so you got to educate. It's an education piece, isn't it?
It really is. And you encounter all sorts of people within an organization. You have the people that are
Mm,
really change agents. They love change. They can't wait to do new things. They're very excited. They're on the front lines of change and they're more than happy to be a part of it. Most of the people in the organization will come, okay, we're changing the way we do this part of our business. We're making this business process change. Okay, give me the tools and I will be there with you. And then there's some people that are really laggards and they will not change for anything. And they've been doing it the same way for 30 years and they're perfectly comfortable doing it that way.
mm,
We have to make sure that we examine each change journey within the organization to that we drive the right stimuli to get them to accept this change. Not everybody's the same. Your ability to stop smoking and do it just at the drop of a
yeah,
hat is commendable. And not many people could do that successfully. That's why there's businesses with nicotine gum and other things that are,
yeah.
can enable that change in behavior and give people a much more comfortable way of making
Mm.
that change. So everybody's
Uh,
different. We do it.
yeah, and I just turned into like a mental challenge myself. Like, I just kept saying you're a loser if you do it, and then like it's just like competition. Like, come on, I can do it, and then
Mhm,
I just end up doing it. So which is honestly, yeah, thank God,
mhm.
really.
Yeah.
So I guess how have the roles and responsibilities within data governance teams evolved then?
Yes. So in previous iterations, and we first created an executive steering group, and we usually had a very high placed executive that really believed that this was a top priority of the organization. So we had an executive steering team, and then they empowered a data governance council that was a series of leaders across the enterprise that then enabled a data governance office or function to deliver things. And then we had data owners and data stewards across the enterprise. We
Mm,
had technical teams that were accepting of the role of data custodian. So we built this pyramid like structure that was very rigid in its design and very hierarchical. And organizations don't have the time to do that anymore. And that's one of the things that has really evolved and changed over time. As we've created these new modern data architectures, we're now taking some of the brakes off of the wheel, if you will, where we're allowing our domains to be much more autonomous in the decisions that they're making around how they want to govern their data. We're using the data governance office or the data governance organization to really implement guardrails so that, okay, this is, hey, domains, we're going to give you autonomy on what you can do, but we need you to play inside of these specific guardrails. And we will coach you on how to do that, but we're going to give you that autonomy to be able to make those decisions. And as data mesh architectures, as data fabric architectures have become the norm and are being much more pervasive in organizations, this is really the method to success. The day of old school centralized planning data governance has really fallen off the map. Nobody's interested in that anymore. There's still room for a data governance council to be in charge of policy in the organization, to really be the group that's enforcing policy, but they're doing it in ways where you're using technology to do it. So, and then our data governance office is there as a coaching function more than anything else. They're coaching data owners and data stewards how to perform their duties. They're not being heavy handed and saying, you must do these things. We're just saying, here's how you can do these things. And again, if you perform within these guardrails, you're going to be successful. So it's a much more agile type approach to it
mm,
instead of a pyramid type approach. And organizations are really grasping onto this concept now, and they're really enjoying sort of the light touch feel to it.
Is that due to, because agile's the boom now, isn't it? Really, is that? Do you think it's interacted with that? Obviously, that constant. We need that constant change because things are moving so quick, aren't they?
I think it's part of it. I think it's part of the paradigm, right? We went to agile because using waterfall delivery methods were just unsuccessful. It's just taking too long. And agile gave us the ability to prototype, to fail fast, and to deliver something in a much more expedient fashion. And this is a similar paradigm, right? In the old days, we used to build data governance capabilities, and it took a long time. And we would get to these different domains, and it would take forever to get there because we're building these key foundational components over time. And organizations ran out of time, patience, and money. And now we have to be much more agile in our approach. We have to be much more sensitive to delivering things quickly because organizations don't have time to wait. They want to deliver these capabilities. And if they slow down, they're going to be surpassed by their competition. And they're in no business to do that now.
Yep. No. Competition is out there, definitely, and especially, I mean, even that more so now from the startup world. You've got competition at all angles, haven't you?
Oh yeah, there's always an organization that is much more nimble that can kneecap the big guys, and because they're able to turn that speedboat around on a dime versus the big organizations that are trying to turn a battleship or an aircraft carrier around, it just takes a long time to do it. Those big organizations have to find ways to be much more nimble and have to find ways to deliver quickly, or they're going to be surpassed by those more challenging, much smaller organizations that have the ability to really change the paradigm of what's going on in their business very quickly. And they have to be able to respond to that. This is all part of this methodology that organizations have to adopt.
Cool. And then you touched on a couple of points on how it's evolved. So, do you want to give a bit bigger overview of how data governance has evolved over the last 5 years?
Yes. So over the last 5 years, we've gone from a very kind of centralized methodology of, we have a centralized group, which is going to make edicts around data governance policy and procedure. The rest of the organization is going to have to follow us. We're going to have, this very thick book of policies that everyone was going to have to conform to. And organizations found that it wasn't successful just because nobody was following the policies, and they essentially ran out of patience, time, and money to deliver this capability successfully. So now we're doing it in a much more agile fashion. We're using the tools at our disposal to be successful. We're allowing domains to be in charge of their own future, to really drive how they choose to govern their data, how they choose to enable their data, how they choose to enable their constituencies to be successful. It is obviously much more distributed in how it's being delivered, but that distribution is really the successful component behind it. And it's much more light touch. So all the heavy duty policy books seem to be finding their way out of organizations. We have minimal policies and procedures that are just enough that's required so that we keep our regulatory folks happy, we keep our oversight organizations happy, but at the same time, we're still allowing our organizations the flexibility to deliver how they see fit. And we're really coaching organizations to drive with a light touch. We're going to give people within organizations, or we're going to give our data stewardship communities the tools to be successful, just enough structure to be successful, but we're going to allow them to operate within their own domains so that they can really be the masters of what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so interesting because it's just how things evolve is just, I think, it's fascinating. How I guess also you got the technology is going to drive a lot of it because things are constantly, well, things are getting better all the time, and there's always going to be that continuous development, isn't there?
I mean, there's such incredible tools out there now that allow us to examine and harness data lineage. Just imagine the ability to see how data is transformed as it comes in from the source of record all the way through to its final resting space, if you will. And you can see the exact transformations, and you can use a tool that you can hover over the different touch points and how that data is being transformed. And you can actually see the code that's transforming it. And you can say, oh, I can see why this error may be taking place, or I can see why this business
Mm.
rule may be causing us some challenges. That wasn't there in the past. That's a real key capability. And then there's new capabilities like active metadata management. Quite often, we've built data catalogs expecting organizations to use these data catalogs over and over again. And unfortunately, people just don't have time to go visit the data catalog. So we've built this Picasso of a data catalog with this. All the data schemas are out there and all of our business glossaries are defined and nobody uses it. And we start asking our questions as to why not. That's because we're not delivering the metadata to where the users are actually located. Now, if we pass that metadata on these different data assets to a Power BI report or a Tableau report, all of a sudden it's right there in their face and they can make sure that they're using the right data assets at the right time for the right purpose. So now we've used these tools to deliver active metadata capabilities to our data consumers. And they're much more now, they're much more enabled and they're much more excited about using these tools. And if you ask someone now, I need you to go to the catalog and investigate these data assets, they're probably not going to do it because they just don't have, they didn't have the time or they don't have the time to do it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's all about efficiency nowadays, isn't it? I think people want it like click a finger sort of thing.
Organizations are, there's no bloat in any organizations these days. They have the minimal amount of workforce to be
Mm,
successful. And it's all about efficiency. We all don't have the time to perform our job duties. We have to do as much as we can in the time we have to do it. And the efficiency is paramount. If we're unable to deliver, if I tell a data steward that your job is going to take 20 hours per week, 30 hours per week, there's no chance that they're going to do it successfully. But if I could tell a data steward that if you can invest 4 or 5 hours per week on your data stewardship tasks, and we're going to give you the tools to make you successful, now they're interested in having that conversation with you. And if you're interested in enabling your data consumers, your constituencies, just using that amount of time per week, now organizations are willing to listen.
yeah. No, I think it's. I was just. Yeah. I guess it's that improvement bit is more makes your job more interesting as well, doesn't it? Because you're solving a problem. It's good for your mind. If you get set in your ways, like if it's like Groundhog Day every day, your day is going to feel like a week, and it's just not going to interest you, is it? But if you're on that constant learning path, that's the buzz, isn't it?
I think it's very interesting. I worked with a client once they were a very sophisticated energy delivery company, but they had contractors out in the field that were measuring the capabilities of their pipelines, the capabilities of their delivery mechanisms. And the data that they were consuming from these contractors that were outside of the organization that were performing these inspections was notoriously flawed.
Mm,
And it was costing this organization hours and hours of time rectifying the data, researching why there were complications, researching why these inspections were, the data was all over the place and it wasn't making any sense. And we actually came up with a mechanism to understand that here's how much time it would take you for a high impact error or a medium impact error or a low impact error. And we actually created, and then we took the number of errors that were being discovered and we multiplied that by the labor rate to actually fix the error and research and fix the error and deal with it. And all of a sudden, it became very apparent to the organization this was costing them millions and millions of dollars in inefficiencies and in potential risk that they would be reporting information that was going to be erroneous. And that was unacceptable to them. Not to mention the fact that these people that were performing the analysis of all this bogus data, they're spending so much time on it that was literally driving them crazy. They didn't have time to do their jobs effectively. So they
yeah.
were raising their hands, standing up. They couldn't accept the challenge fast enough to be data stewards. They loved it. They couldn't, they were completely on board from the beginning. And the best part about it was because we were able to scorecard out our data quality success. Okay. So in the first time we did it, we found hundreds or millions or thousands of data quality errors. And the organization was shocked, they're just completely overwhelmed by this. But over time, we showed the improvement because of the things that we were doing. We found our root causes. We were fixing things before they actually got into our ecosystem. We were improving every single day. And because of that, now we were seeing the real tremendous impact on why we were doing this. And every day you see that improvement, every day you're able to chart that improvement to deliver that capability to show that business value, then organizations are incredibly interested in doing it. What
Yeah.
to
It's that
me,
momentum as well.
yes, and to me,
Yeah.
one of the most interesting books I've ever read on really how to improve yourself is a book called Atomic Habits by a guy named James Clear. And he
Mm,
talked about how if you just improve 1% per day, the improvement is incredible. And talks about how the British cycling teams took this in as their philosophy, and then they became incredibly successful on the cycling track or in the Tour de France and in those areas. And I coach organizations to do the same thing. You're not going to improve your data quality by 100% in less than a month. But if you improve your data quality 1% per day and you're continuing to keep your nose to the grindstone and continuing to improve every day, finding new ways to improve and showing your improvement over time, making sure you're delivering that value. Now organizations see exactly why we're doing it, and they're beginning to enjoy the benefits behind it.
Yeah. No, I've read that book as well, and it's nice. It's discipline and consistency is the main thing, isn't it? If you keep doing the same thing every day, or like looking to improve every day, you obviously it's not going to be like A. You're not going to get A to B. It's going to be a challenge. It's like with anything in life. But if you keep constantly doing it, constantly striving to achieve, you c- you're going to obviously come across hurdles, but you're going to get the answer if you keep going. Really, in my opinion, because you're going to learn, aren't you? You're going to learn. You're going to. I don't like saying fail because if you constant, you should just learn, isn't it? You learn to get there.
But you've made the biggest point as to why organizations have failed with data governance, because they've taken their eye off the ball and they stopped trying to improve every day. They've deprioritized it. They're not watching it on a daily basis. Nobody's in charge of it. And essentially the effort spins out of control and eventually becomes meaningless. And all of a sudden, all those problems that they were fixing over time, that improvement they were gaining, has been completely lost. And now they're in a crisis situation. So now they have to get back into it. And it's going to cost them a lot more money. It's going to require a lot more effort to get their data under control and properly managed, because they've allowed themselves to take their eye off of the ball at that point. So you have to understand that this is a journey, that's it's going to continue over time. And you may never reach the point where you're finished. You may never reach the point where you're stopping doing this, because there will be code changes that will break data pipelines, and errors will exist, and you're going to have to find
Yeah.
ways to solve those problems. New technologies are going to be introduced, new systems are going to be deployed, and going to fight the data quality journey. You're going to have to fight the metadata management journey every single day. And if you drop the ball and you deprioritize data governance, you're going to be in a position where you're going to feel very exposed. And you want to make sure that you're never in that position, because that's where bad things begin to happen. So you have to constantly remind yourself that you're constantly doing this. It's a culture change. It's not a capitalized project that you're just going to say, okay, we're finished, we're done, we shake hands, we high five, and then we move on. It doesn't. It's not that simple.
Yeah, well, it's not an end date, is there? Because you keep getting new
No,
data, so there's no
yeah,
end date. You've got to keep going. Like,
you have
I've
to.
said to before, even if you deliver one project, something new comes out. It's like that's like you said. It's data's a journey, like it's a never-ending journey because it's it's constant evolution.
It is a constant evolution. We're constantly introducing new tools, new
Yeah,
software, new code into production within organizations. And sometimes that code breaks. Sometimes it's not
yeah,
perfect. And we have to be there to make sure that we're stopping these bad things from happening before they become a problem. And you never stop doing it. You have to constantly improve. And if you feel like, okay, I've reached the mountaintop, and I've reached that point of success, you still have to maintain it. You still have to make sure that you're still driving those things so that you're always going to be at that level of excellence. You never want to decrease the wins. You never want to get back the wins that you've gained by performing all the hard work that you've done up to that point.
okay. Yeah, let's move on to the next question then. Um, so, how as we discussed a lot there, how will the growing focus on like ethics impact data governance frameworks? Because this is enough. I think this is another growing field, isn't it?
It's really a growing field. And as part of my work at Newsot, I've created a new framework as to how we deliver data governance and AI governance capabilities. And data ethics is really at the top of the chain when we're especially in the AI marketplace, because we have to be ethical about how we create our models. We have to be ethical about keeping bias out of our data science models so that they're not giving us false positives. They're not driving us in the wrong direction. Everybody talks about how Google tried to do their AI and it was flawed with bias in their mechanism, and they had to take it down, and it was embarrassing for them. Data ethics is incredibly important here, because we want to make sure we're using data for good. We want to make sure that we're doing it for all the right reasons, but we also want to make sure that we're not doing it for the wrong reasons. And where sometimes we're too intrusive, sometimes we're putting ourselves in positions where we may be wanting to answer a lot of the challenges of the world. Sometimes maybe we're too personal about it, or sometimes maybe we're going down a pathway that we shouldn't be going. So I do think that data ethics is going to become an increasingly important component of how we deliver things from a data management perspective. And I think that will be maybe the new opportunity for data enablement organizations to be successful, to make sure that data ethics are being managed appropriately and responsibly.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's, like I said, like it's going to be a growing field, and I think it's going to be one of them where it's going to be new. It's going to create new opportunities because it's going to just add, I guess, open up different areas to go down, isn't it, for businesses?
Oh, yes. I think, frankly, businesses have more data about their consumers and their customers than they've ever had before. They're able to analyze their behaviors in ways that they've never been able to see in the
Mm,
past. The world is very intrusive these days. I used to work in media and entertainment, and when you're able to see the consumption histories of consumers as far as what they're seeing on television and what they're watching and when they're watching it, you're really in the living room now with all of your customers. And that may be a level of intrusion that customers may not necessarily be excited about. Now, we give them recommendations. Netflix lives on giving you recommendations for programming because they think they have a good handle on what you like to watch. So they're monitoring all of that consumption that you're giving them based on the titles that you're viewing, based on your viewership. And now they're providing you recommendations, but they completely understand what consumer Ben is watching on Netflix. And
mm.
you may not necessarily be very excited about the fact that Netflix is in your living room saying, hey, how do they know that I would like this? Or how do they know that I would respond to this way? That's because, hey, they're in your living room with you. So the ethical usage of that data is becoming
Yeah,
paramount because if that data gets in the wrong hands, hey, Ben, why did you watch that title versus this title? How do you know that? So
yeah.
again, ethics at the top of the tree, because as we know more and more about our customers, as we get deeper into their lives, deeper into the understanding of all the data that's out there in the world that we can use to our benefit, we have to make sure that we're doing it ethically and responsibly.
Yeah, that's interesting. Obviously, yeah, yeah. I guess pros and cons, isn't there, in that space? So obviously, you touched on earlier. What's on the challenges? What are the biggest challenges organisations face when trying to implement or I guess update their governance?
I think the biggest challenge is making sure, first of all, that you have executive buy-in to do this. So many data governance efforts fail or die on the vine because there's really no leadership, there's no executive that really makes this a top priority of the organization. And that leadership can come from anywhere in the organization. It can be a chief data officer, it could be a chief information officer, it could be a chief operations officer. It doesn't matter if they're on the business side or the technology side or the analytics side. But somebody at that C level needs to make this a priority because organizations respond when leadership says this is a top priority. So that's the first thing. You've got to make sure that the leadership is on board. They're willing to fund this. They're willing to make it an organizational priority. So once you do that, now you're in a position where you can be successful. Next, make sure that you've crafted and created an organizational footprint, your operating model that can be successful. You've deployed your operating pieces in the right places so that they can have their eyes on the data, but they can do it efficiently and in an organized way. Give them the tools to be successful, train them, manage the change appropriately within the organization. Make sure the people are on board, create enough process, create enough policy so that the organizational guardrails are created so that we're obviously driving the way it needs to be driven,
Mm,
ensuring success in the organization. And then the final piece, which is probably the most important piece, scorecard, monitor, report, examine, and constantly enhance and improve. If you don't know what your success metrics are, you will never achieve success. So you have to understand what your goals are, understand what your success metrics are, and drive towards their success and constantly use that as your report
mm,
card, as your measurement of your capability, and establish those goals and make those and create those goals in collaboration with your leadership to say we're going to get to this point by the end of this year and we're going to do it any way possible, and here are the measures we're going to put in place to get there. So constantly measure yourself to make sure that you're delivering the right value to the organization.
there's some excellent points there. And like I said, I guess easier said than done, isn't it? Like anything. Because like I said, again, when you do change, so many different things pop up. And I guess you can't plan for everything, can you?
No, you
You
can't
got to
plan.
get,
Yeah, you can't plan for everything, but you have to be adaptable and you have to be flexible.
yeah.
So as things happen, there's no one rigid approach to being successful. I can't sit out here and write the playbook to deliver data governance. So you've got to follow everything from page 1 to page 300. That's not realistic these days. You have to be flexible. So organizations have different levels of maturity. Some of them are much farther down the journey than others. Some of them need a lot of help. Some of them need a little bit of help. So let's put in the right prescription with some flexibility, some best practice. Here's how you can be successful, and let's get you to the right answer.
Cool. And then I guess, like we said before, everyone's on a data journey, but how does data governance differ across different industries then?
A lot of people bristle when I say this, but data is data, right? And no matter the industry, the challenges remain the same. That being said, in some industries like financial services and highly regulated industries, obviously you have to have a much more voluminous footprint of policy and procedure and things that you can essentially codify that show that you're performing your duties based on this policy and we're going to do it in a specific way, and you can demonstrate that. Other industries don't have as much rigor built into their requirements, and that's fine depending upon the industry. Some industries have embraced data management and data governance simply because they had to, and other industries have really sidestepped it because they felt like it was too onerous and they didn't have time to do it. I mentioned Netflix before. The media and entertainment industry is notoriously bad on data governance because they feel like things are moving so quickly they don't have time to do this. And then they have certain challenges. Meanwhile, highly regulated industries like financial services have real deep organizational data governance organizations that have been practicing this art for a long time. And they're probably the most mature in this area and essentially require the least amount of help. So everywhere in between, I work a lot with utilities, I work a lot with healthcare organizations, and even those industries are regulated. They're now seeing that they have to be much more strict and stringent about their data governance because and how they're enabling things. Because in the past, analytics wasn't necessarily a huge thing on their radar, but as we've transformed into this modern world, now they're seeing that they really need analytics to be successful, and without the ability to govern and enable their data, they're not meeting the challenges of their organizations. So it's been interesting seeing how different industries look at this problem. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to achieve the same thing. And no matter what the industry is, data leaders tell me the same thing every day. I want to have self-service, data-driven decisioning. I want to improve the data literacy of my organization. I want to improve the culture of data within my organization. How do I do it? And they're all asking the same questions.
Mhm. So then, as you touched, like you said, a couple of industries are not like fully on board and it, or they've just got too much going on. How can organisations ensure that data governance is not just like a compliance exercise, but also adds like real business value to the business? Because at the end of the day, C level, that's what they're going to all be. That's what they care about. That's what they need. That's what they need to worry about, don't they? Really. So it's not only
Yes,
what they care about.
no, we have to drive business value. This can't be an academic
Yeah.
experience. We can't organizations that when I come in and visit a client organization, they say, "Here's our book of policies," and great, okay, how much business value is that driving for you? We don't know. So you have to measure yourself. You have to make sure that you're answering the call as far as business value. So if I'm improving my data quality, how much is that inefficiency costing my organization? How much is the bad data that's gone into my enterprise? How much is that costing my teams every day? Is that impairing my decision making in my organization? How much churn is in my organization because I haven't identified the right data assets and I haven't defined them properly? And now I have an uninformed, illiterate data marketplace within my organization that's using the wrong data assets to make key decisions. Those are the things where you're finding your problems. And if you're able to reduce those problems and show that value, then you're going to be successful. At the end of the day, we're like any other business function. We have to show our value. We have to show that we're worth funding, we're worth the budget, we're worth the money that's being invested in this capability. And if you don't show the business value, then organizations don't have a reason to fund you. They don't have a reason for you to be there. So you have to constantly show that value. And quite often, the easiest way to show that value, the lowest hanging fruit, is in data quality improvement. If you can show improvement over time, organizational efficiency improvement, that's an easy point to in success. Hey, look at how our data quality has improved over time. Think of how much more efficient and smart and literate our organization is because of that. We're actively moving our metadata. We're actively exposing our metadata so that our users know exactly what they're dealing with at the right time. They're the right data assets at the right time. They're employing them at the right way to make the right decisions. Perfect. We feel very comfortable about the data that we're pushing to models that are being trained to really drive data science these days. These are all ways that we're showing business value. And the constant scorecarding, the constant measurement is how organizations will show that success and will show that they're actually creating the value for their leadership to feel comfortable about the culture that they're building.
You touched on the scorecard quite a few times. I guess it's an easy way, isn't it, just to articulate it across the business? Because then you want to prove, you want proof, don't you? Really, like at the end of the day, like if we invest in X, we're going to get this. It makes business sense, doesn't it? It just makes it so much easier to understand.
It makes it easier to understand, right? Well, what's the ultimate
Yeah,
measurement of a business? Stockholder value, revenue
yeah,
growth, improvement of margin. So those are financial measurements that have been around since the dawn of time as far as how businesses can measure the value that they're creating. There's no difference in why in the data world we can't do the exact same thing. How much value are we creating? How much organizational improvement are we fostering because we're able to do these things appropriately and show it? If you can't show it, if you can't measure it, then it's probably not happening. So you have to be able to have the wherewithal to show it, and you have to be comfortable in the ability that you're able to measure yourself.
yeah. Brilliant. And then, can you share a case study or an example where an organization has successfully transformed its data governance strategy, and then I guess got that success?
Yeah, absolutely. Over the past number of years, I've dealt with a number of organizations that have had challenges, especially in the data quality area. And I alluded to this earlier, but it's probably the easiest case study to explain in that they were acquiring all this data from an outside data source that was coming into their organization that was horribly flawed, and those flaws were causing their organization to experience new incredible amount of inefficiency, and in some cases causing them significant problems in what they were trying to achieve, to the point where if something was missed, it could be potentially be a danger to the public if you had something that could cause potential problem. So by understanding first where the quality problems were occurring, and then putting in the right prescriptions as to how to remediate those problems, and then putting in the right procedure to make sure that data is not coming into the enterprise, that we're stopping it at its point of origin, we're improving it, we're correcting it, and then we're making sure that as it comes in, it's successful. That's rectifying a lot of problems downstream. And then building upon that model and scaling it. And there's no reason why organizations have to build out an entire organization of data stewards before they can run and do things that are going to drive value within their organization. Find the right use case, do things in miniature, perfect what you're doing, and then scale it outwards. And that's how we worked at this particular client. That's why they were so successful. That's what drove the immediate understanding of that at the C level to say, wow, that value and that's something that we're creating and that's putting us in a position where we can be successful. We're essentially, it's keeping us out of trouble as well. That's very
Mhm.
important to us. And we're going to make sure that we continue to scale those processes and that capability outward so that we now have it across the enterprise instead of just in one specific or two specific use cases.
And then, what are the challenges encountered to like implement data governance, and how can they be avoided?
Excuse me. So the challenges are always similar. They don't fund it. They don't give it executive priority. And
Okay.
because organizations are very simple sometimes, if somebody doesn't make it a priority in the organization, nobody does it because there's only so much time and there's only so much budget available. So that's job one. If it's not someone's priority, then it's not going to be in a priority in an organization. So that has to be solved first. And then remember, it's a culture change. Just like we said, it's going to take us a long time to get to the mountaintop, but we have to keep going. We have to keep doing it. It's not just a specific project, which is going to have a specific beginning and end. And you have to understand that with eyes wide open going in. This is a culture change that we're delivering to an organization. And we have to understand that we're in it for the long term and that it's not necessarily going to end 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. This is a capability that you're building that has to constantly be at the top of its game, or else you're eventually going to have problems. You may not have problems today, but you'll surely have them tomorrow if you de-emphasize this capability moving forward.
And then, I guess, obviously on that, what would be the top tip for companies on their data governance journey, what would you most likely to advise?
Besides hiring us to help you do it, excuse me, I apologize. The top tip is it to me is simple. You've got to understand that you're going on this journey, but it has to be a journey on three legs of the stool. You're going to build a technical capability, you're going to build an operational capability, and you're going to build the business process to be successful.
Hmm.
If you don't do it all three legs of that stool, the stool will fall. So everything has to be done in parallel. And so many organizations, hey, I built my organization, but I didn't have the technology to deliver it, and the data governance effort failed. True. Or hey, I dropped this set the software package in, we built it, it's fantastic, nobody uses it. Data governance fails. So it's a three-legged operation where you're building your business process, you're building, and in a lot of cases, you're automating that business process through that data governance tool that you're building, and you have your people operation going on. All three areas must be working in concert with each other, or ultimately you're not going to be successful. And that's the key thing I always tell people.
Yeah. No, I think especially with spoke to a lot of leaders, and I think a lot of big challenges. Also, an area topic similar to discuss is like embedding business strategy with data strategy and how to do it as well. Because it's
Yeah.
like, there's so many different challenges, hurdles, things you need to discuss, isn't there? It's a massive project.
It's a massive project, but it doesn't have to be the most expensive project that your organization
Mm,
funds this year. There are gains, there's maturity that can be enhanced and improved with the right amount of investment. It doesn't have to be the biggest investment. You're not paying for a full SAP build out of your organization in a project that's
yeah,
going to take 5 years to build out and it's going to cost you millions and millions of dollars. That's not it. We can find the right amount of investment to drive the right amount of change, and we can do it in a way that makes you successful. We can do it in a light touch way. So it doesn't require a tremendous amount of financial investment, but it does require some, and it requires an investment in your people. And if you do that the right way, then you can be successful.
brilliant. Cool. That was a really interesting chat, Eric. I really appreciate your time and thanks for coming on.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks.